Today's lesson is from the June 2014 Regents exam, and I'm going to talk to you not only about content, but about some strategies. So if you look at here, it says base your answers to question 1 and 2 on the timeline below and on your knowledge of social studies. And anytime you have a timeline, a graph, a chart, a cartoon, a passage, you always read the question first so that you know what you're looking for in the document above. So this says which conclusion is best supported by the information on the timeline. So we have British actions on top, 1750 to 1780, and then what happens with the colonial reactions in the same time period. So we start with the proclamation line of 1763. Remember, they drew a line on the map and said we couldn't move west of that. We have the Sugar Act, which is a tax on sugar, the Stamp Act, which is a tax on some paper goods and other daily items. And obviously the colonists do not react well to that, and they start boycotting British goods. So then the Stamp Act is repealed. But then the next year they turn around and pass the Townshend Acts, the Tea Act. We start rebelling. We form our first Continental Congress. Shots are fired at Lexington and Concord. We declare our independence. We fight the Revolutionary War, and we gain our freedom. So let's go back to this. So which conclusion is best supported by the information on the timeline? Britain eventually granted the colonies representation in Parliament. Only elected British officials had the right to levy taxes. Britain's efforts to increase control over the colonies were not successful. Creation of the First Continental Congress was an immediate reaction to the passage of the Stamp Act. Now remember, we get rid of 2, we choose our right answer, and then we go forward. So I'm going to help you get rid of 2, and then you're going to pause, pick your right answer, and then start us back up again. So I'm going to look at this and say creation of the First Continental Congress was an immediate reaction to the passage of the Stamp Act. So let's go back up here. We have First Continental Congress was formed in 1774, and we have the Stamp Act passed in 1765. And I don't know about you, but 9 years is not really immediate. So we're going to get rid of 4. Let's go back up to the top. Britain eventually granted the colonies representation in Parliament. Well, we know that didn't happen, because if that had happened, then we probably wouldn't have declared our independence, because remember, we believed that only if we had representation were those people able to tax us, and that was the whole point. So let's get rid of 1. So that leaves 2 and 3. Only elected British officials had the right to levy taxes, and Britain's efforts to increase control over the colonies were not successful. So go ahead and choose the one you want after you pause it, and then come back and see if you agree with me. All right, so welcome back. I'm going to choose 3. Britain's efforts to increase control over the colonies were not successful. And we can see that because of the fact that if they had been successful, we wouldn't have formed our own government, fired shots, and then declared our independence. So none of that would have happened if they had been successful. So that's why the right answer is 3. So let's go down to question 2. Which of these events would be placed on the map before 1763? So I'm looking to put something over here on the map. We have the Boston Massacre, the French and Indian War, the Battle of Saratoga, and the passage of the Northwest Ordinance. All right, so I'm thinking to myself, I don't know when any of these things happened. So let's try to do process of elimination. All right, so I know that the Boston Massacre happened around when the Boston Tea Party happened. So that can't go all the way back over here. All right, French and Indian War, not really sure about that. So let's go over here to the Battle of Saratoga. And the Battle of Saratoga is going to happen during the Revolutionary War. So that obviously cannot be placed on the timeline before 1763. And then we have the passage of the Northwest Ordinance. And in order to have the passage of the Northwest Ordinance, we have to have fought the Revolutionary War, won it, formed the government, and written the Articles of Confederation. Because if you remember, the Articles of Confederation was one of the only positive things that came out of, or successful things that came out of the Articles of Confederation. So we know that the answer is the French and Indian War. So see how we answered that question, even though we really didn't know when we read it. All right, so question number 3. From the 1600s through the 1800s, the major reason for the westward movement of settlers was to escape urban unrest in coastal cities, avoid high taxes in the East, find manufacturing jobs in the Midwest, acquire new areas of fertile soil for agriculture. So we're going to get rid of 2 and choose our answer. All right, so escape urban unrest in coastal cities. We didn't really have coastal cities back here. We had a couple, but not very many. And we're going to obviously have more as the population increases towards the 1800s. But there wasn't urban unrest that would cause a westward movement of settlers. So let's get rid of number 1. All right, number 2, avoid high taxes in the East. Although there were taxes, obviously, especially as we were just talking about up here, right? That's not why people were moving west. So you have 3 and 4 to choose from, and why don't you go ahead and pause the video, choose your answer, and come back. All right, welcome back. So I hope that you chose 4, acquire new areas of fertile soil for agriculture, because we didn't have manufacturing in the 16s, 17s, and much of the 1800s, especially in the Midwest. We didn't really have that until later into the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. So that's why the correct answer is 4. All right, so the last question we're going to do in today's study session is the colonial era New England town meetings and the Virginia House of Burgesses were both. Now, anytime you ever see New England town meetings, Virginia House of Burgesses, Mayflower Compact, Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, you're always going to want to think about, all right, so those were early ways for us to get involved in government. So let's see if there's an answer about that. Early social reform movements, attempts to build a strong national government, steps in the growth of representative democracy, efforts to regulate trade with Native American Indians. So let's get rid of 2. Early social reform movements. Well, I think these were trying to get people involved in the democratic process. That doesn't sound like social reform, so I'm going to get rid of 1. 2, attempts to build a strong national government. Well, New England and Virginia, those sounds like colonies to me. So I don't think at this point in time we're trying to find a national government. So I'm going to get rid of 2. So that leaves 3 and 4 for you to choose from. So think about it, pause the video, answer the question, and come back. Welcome back. All right, I hope that you chose 3, steps in the growth of representative democracy, because both of these are going to have people talking on behalf of other people, and that's what a representative democracy is. All right, so that's the end of study session today.